Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has urged the international community to take steps to counter illicit flow of money. Addressing a panel on financial accountability, transparency on the sidelines of the ongoing United Nations General Assembly session, Khan said the stolen assets of the developing countries must be returned. He added that the international community must take decisive action to stop this bleeding of the poor and the developing countries. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says peace in Afghanistan will lead to regional stability. In a video address to the Conference on Interaction and Confidence-Building Measures in Asia on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, Qureshi said a political solution to the Afghan conflict is the only way forward. Touching upon other regional issues, Qureshi said human rights violations by Indian troops continue unabated in occupied Kashmir. He added that the Kashmir dispute should be resolved as per UN resolutions and according to the will of Kashmiris. Ambassadors, diplomats and defense attaches of various countries visited Pakistan's line of control. The delegation met with the victims of India's ceasefire violations. State media reported the diplomats were told that Indian troops intentionally target civilians in unprovoked fighting. It said Indian troops have committed more than 2,300 ceasefire violations this year so far. Foreign ministers from 4 Arab and European countries say a two-state solution is the only path to end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The top diplomats from France, Egypt, Germany and Jordan said this during a meeting in Amman. Following the meeting, France's Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian said Paris is ready to support talks. The coronavirus outbreak continues to overwhelm India as another 1,129 have died in the past 24 hours, while over 86,000 people have tested positive. The country's death toll has crossed 91,000 mark with over 5.7 million infections. In Pakistan, 5 people lost their lives overnight, taking the toll to 6,437. Globally, the virus has claimed over 975,000 lives while infecting more than 31.7 million people. Former Australian cricket legend Dean Jones has died of a heart attack at the age of 59 in India. Born in Melbourne, Jones played 52 test matches and 164 one-day matches for Australia. He had been an active cricket analyst and commentated on various leagues around the world. Those are the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has urged the international community to take steps to counter illicit flow of money. Addressing a panel on financial accountability and transparency on the sidelines of the ongoing United Nations General Assembly session, Khan said the stolen assets of the developing countries must be returned and the criminals must be held accountable. He added that the international community must take decisive action to stop this bleeding of the poor and developing countries. The Prime Minister said billions of dollars are lost due to tax evasion by multinational companies every year. Addressing a separate event on poverty at a crossroad, Khan said COVID-19 has pushed the world in its worst recession. He called on the UN to help developing countries recover from the effects of the pandemic. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says peace in Afghanistan will lead to regional stability. In a video address to the Conference on Interaction and Confidence Building Measures in Asia on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, Qureshi said a political solution to the Afghan conflict is the only way forward. Touching upon other regional issues, Qureshi said human rights violations by Indian troops continue unabated in occupied Kashmir. He added that the Kashmir dispute should be resolved as per UN resolutions and according to the will of Kashmiris. The foreign minister condemns unilateral actions taken to change the demography of disputed areas. He went on to say that Pakistan will continue to play its role for the success of the SAARC forum. The foreign minister said the coronavirus pandemic has affected the global economy. Pakistan has demanded an international probe into extrajudicial killings of Kashmiris by Indian forces. At a weekly press briefing in Islamabad, Foreign Office spokesperson Zahid Hafiz Chaudhary said India cannot cover up its heinous war crimes in the occupied valley. He said Pakistan condemns India's continued attempts to illegally alter the demographic structure of occupied Jammu and Kashmir. This comes as Indian troops murdered another civilian during a military operation in the Pulwama district. Indian troops have killed over 300 Kashmiris since New Delhi revoked the special status of Kashmir last year. Ambassadors, diplomats and defense attaches of 24 countries visited Pakistan's side of the line of control. The delegation met with the victims of India's ceasefire violations. More in this report.
State media reported the diplomats were told that Indian troops intentionally target civilians in the unprovoked firing. It said Indian troops have committed over 2,300 ceasefire violations this year so far. During the visit, the Director General of the military's media wing said the Indian troops used cluster ammunition to target civilians along the LOC. Following the visit, Turkey's ambassador Ehsan Mustafa Yerdakul said Kashmir dispute must be resolved as per the resolutions of the UN Security Council. Iranian Deputy Ambassador Ali Muhammad Surkhabi said Tehran stands by Kashmiris in their struggle for freedom. The trip of the foreign dignitaries is in stark contrast to India banning foreign ambassadors as well as the UN's observers from visiting their side of the LOC.
In Pakistan, around 10,000 members of the Hindu community are heading towards the Indian High Commission in Islamabad to protest the killing of Pakistani Hindus in India. They are demanding justice for 11 Hindus who were killed by Hindu extremists in India's Jodhpur district last year in August. And to talk more about this, we are joined by our correspondent Minahil Ahmed, who is right now among the protesters. Minahil, what are the demands of the protesters and how long will they hold the sit-in outside the Indian High Commission?
Yes, Jawad, around 10,000 people from the Pakistani Hindu community have gathered in Islamabad from cities all across Pakistan. We are currently at Srinagar Highway and are moving towards the Indian High Commission in Islamabad. The protesters are here to demand justice for the 11 Pakistani Hindus that were killed in the Jodhpur district of India. Ms. Mukti, who is a member of the deceased family, has nominated BJP and RSS for the killings. The reason she says is that her family did not agree to spy for India in Pakistan and did not agree to give any anti-Pakistani statements, which is why they were killed. So the Hindu community over here is demanding justice, is demanding for the FIR, the postmortem reports and the initial investigation. And they have said that they will not leave until their demands are not fulfilled and justice is not given to the family.
Minahil Ahmed, thank you very much for the updates. Our correspondent updating us regarding a convoy of 10,000 Hindus marching towards the Indian High Commission to stage their protest over the killing of 11 Hindus in India's Jodhpur city. And now moving on, in Afghanistan, the government says the Taliban have killed 28 policemen in a series of attacks on security checkposts in the southern part of the country. The local officials say the Taliban shot dead a number of security personnel even after they surrendered in the southern province of Uruzgan. The group claimed responsibility for the attacks in several provinces but denied killing unarmed policemen. The latest spike in violence comes as the warring sides are engaged in peace talks in Doha aimed at ending the decades-long war. The agreement is expected to pave the way for the withdrawal of all the foreign troops from Afghanistan. Foreign ministers from 4 Arab and European countries say a two-state solution is the only path to end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The top diplomats from France, Egypt, Germany and Jordan said this during a meeting in Amman. Following the meeting, French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian said Palestinians and the Israelis must prove their commitment to dialogue. His Jordanian counterpart, Ayman al-Safadi, said the conflict should be resolved on the basis of the two-state solution. The four ministers also praised recent deals establishing ties between Israel and the two Gulf states, UAE and Bahrain. Joining the meeting online, German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas said the agreements show peace in the region is possible. However, Palestinians have slammed the recent normalization deals with Israel as a betrayal of their cause. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says Cyprus and Greece's maximalist claims are behind tensions in the eastern Mediterranean. Erdogan made the comments during a video conference with head of EU Commission Ursula von der Leyen. He said both Athens and Nicosia are ignoring the rights of Ankara and Northern Cyprus. Ankara's communication directorate said the two officials also discussed Turkish-EU ties and regional developments. Erdogan said Ankara is ready for talks with Athens and expressed hope that Greece will not miss this opportunity for dialogue. Earlier, Erdogan discussed the situation in the disputed waters with NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg. In a tweet, Stoltenberg said the two sides discussed ongoing efforts for military deconfliction to avoid incidents. Russia claims the militants are planning a massive chemical attack in Syria's city of Idlib to accuse the central government. In a statement, the Russian Center for Reconciliation in Syria said toxic agents have already been shipped into Idlib. The center said militants are preparing to make staged videos to pin blame on the Syrian government. It said the chemical weapons will be used against the civilian population. Meanwhile, Syria's state media said militants have prepared 2 tons of toxic agents and are keeping it in an inhabited locality in the southwest of Idlib. It said that Syria condemns such heinous crimes and calls on the countries supporting terrorists to stop these tricks that target civilians. It added Syria will hold the US, France, Germany, the Netherlands and Turkey responsible for the killing of innocent people without any moral deterrent. Russia has condemned Bulgaria's decision to declare its 2 diplomats persona non grata. In a statement, Russia's foreign ministry said it views Bulgaria's move as an attempt to harm bilateral cooperation. The ministry said Russia will retaliate against Bulgaria's expulsion of the 2 officials accused of spying. It said the goal was to transfer the official and the state secrets to the Russian military intelligence, but Moscow denies any allegations. The UK says it is preparing sanctions against Belarusian officials in coordination with the US and Canada. Addressing the Parliament, Foreign Minister Dominic Raab said London does not accept the results of the presidential elections in Belarus. Raab said Britain will sanction those responsible for human rights violations in Belarus. This comes hours after the EU said Alexander Lukashenko is not the legitimate president of Belarus because he gained power through electoral fraud. In a statement, EU's diplomatic chief Josep Borrell said Lukashenko's swearing in goes against the will of the people. France says international partners must ramp up pressure on Lebanese political forces to form a government. In a speech, Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian said the political forces have still not managed to agree on forming a government. He said strong and convergent pressures are pivotal to push the Lebanese officials to respect their commitments. Le Drian said there will be no international financial aid without the reforms. Meanwhile, the International Support Group for Lebanon also called on the country's leaders to get united and form a government. Iraq's President Barham Saleh has called on international leaders to unite in the fight against corruption and terrorism. Saleh made the comments in a pre-recorded speech played at the United Nations General Assembly. Saleh said terrorism cannot completely be eradicated if its financing is not dried up. He said among the tasks which the new government must discharge is holding of early elections next year. Saleh said these elections should be free and transparent within the framework of a new electoral law. The president also called on the UN to tackle horrific crimes against the Yazidi people.
We must tackle the crimes of genocide and of the massacres of the Yazidi people in Iraq. These acts aimed to exterminate the Yazidi people. For this reason, the international community must stand shoulder to shoulder with Iraq to ensure that such crimes can never be committed again.
It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In the United States, 2 police officers have been shot and injured during protests against a grand jury's decision over the killing of Breonna Taylor in Louisville. Earlier, the jury decided 3 officers involved in the killing of the 26-year-old black lady will not be charged for her death.
A state of emergency has been declared in Louisville, and the National Guard have also been deployed to contain the growing number of protesters. Police say both officers who were shot during a clash with demonstrators are stable and have non-life-threatening injuries. On the 13th of March, Breonna Taylor was shot multiple times during a police raid at her apartment. Her death has become a rallying cry for anti-racism protesters who have called for the 3 officers involved to be arrested and charged. But the jury charged only 1 officer with wanton endangerment for firing into a neighbor's apartment in Louisville. The other 2 officers have not been charged.
The U.S. says it has imposed sanctions on individuals and entities linked to the leader of Russia's Internet Research Agency. In a statement, the Treasury Department said the IRA conducts operations to exacerbate political tensions and divisions in foreign countries. It said the department has imposed sanctions against the network of Kremlin-connected Russian businessman Evgeny Prigozhin. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said Prigozhin is a leader of the IRA and has ties to Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Treasury said the blacklisted individuals are working to advance Russia's influence in the Central African Republic. The IRA is a St. Petersburg-based company that U.S. intelligence officials say was central to Moscow to sway the 2016 presidential election. The U.S. has announced new sanctions related to Cuba, restricting the imports of cigars and liquor from the Caribbean country. Speaking at a White House event, President Donald Trump said the Treasury Department will prohibit U.S. travelers from staying at properties owned by the Cuban government. The president said the decision is part of America's continuing fight against communist oppression. Last year, Washington imposed heavy curbs on travel to Cuba, saying the move aimed to pressure Havana over its support for Venezuela. Since taking office in 2017, Trump has sought to unwind a policy of warming of ties with Cuba pursued by his predecessor, President Barack Obama. Japan's Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga says Tokyo and Seoul must cooperate to counter any threat from North Korea. Speaking to reporters after a telephone call with South Korea's President Moon Jae-in, Suga said the 2 countries should repair bilateral ties. Moon says South Korea and Japan share some same strategic interests and will continue to work for peace in Northeast Asia. Earlier, Seoul accused the North Korean military of killing and burning a missing South Korean official. In a statement, the Defense Ministry said the man had disappeared from a patrol boat near the border and was later found in the North's waters. The ministry condemned the killing and urged Pyongyang to punish those involved in the outrageous act. NASA has warned the U.S. Congress of China's dominance in space after 2030 if Washington does not boost its presence in the Earth's orbit. NASA Chief Jim Bridenstine said the U.S. International Space Station will be decommissioned by 2030, leaving an open playing field for Beijing. He He said it is critical to maintain US space supremacy in the face of a planned Chinese space station likely to be deployed by 2022. In June, China announced that it is partnering with 23 entities from 17 countries to carry out scientific experiments on the station. At least 28 people have died in a gas tanker explosion in Nigeria's central Kogi state. Authorities say 9 children were among those killed. Police said the crash happened after the brakes failed, making the driver lose control of the tanker. They said the explosion took place opposite a petrol station along a highway in the state. State governor says the accident led to loss of lives and destroyed many vehicles, properties, and other valuables. The coronavirus outbreak continues to overwhelm India as another 1,129 people have died in the past 24 hours. While over 86,000 people have tested positive, globally, the virus has claimed over 975,000 lives, while infecting more than 31.7 million people. More in this report.
As some countries in Asia have succeeded to curb the spread of virus, India struggles with thousands of cases on a daily basis. Country's death toll has crossed 91,000 mark with over 5.7 million infections. Mainland China has reported 7 new cases, down from 10 reported a day earlier. Over in Australia's Victoria state, the number of new daily cases was close to a 3-month low. Boeing hopes that restrictions will be eased sooner than expected.
These numbers are coming down. This strategy is working. We are well on track on Sunday to make some further announcements, and I just wanted to make the point that Sunday will not be a day of massive steps. It will not be, the roadmap does not speak to that. It is not a day when we essentially throw the doors open. It will be, however, steady and safe steps, and that sense of gradual, continual progress.
Brazil has world's 3rd highest number of coronavirus cases, leading vaccine makers to seek out South America's largest country to test their candidates. The country's Sao Paulo state authorities say they're likely to start immunizing their population with China's Sinovac vaccine in mid-December. Over in Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau warns the country is on the brink of a surge if people did not follow public health guidelines.
In our 4 biggest provinces, the second wave isn't just starting. It's already underway. The numbers are clear. Back on March 13th, when we went into lockdown, there were 47 new cases of COVID-19. Yesterday alone, we had well over 1,000. We're on the brink of a fall that could be much worse than the spring.
In Europe, like other countries where the infection rate has soared, France has been gradually tightening limits on gatherings to avoid a second national lockdown. Unveiling a map of coronavirus danger zones, Paris has given the hardest-hit local authorities days to tighten restrictions or risk having a state of health emergency declared there.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 5 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 in the last 24 hours. The health ministry says nearly 800 people tested positive for the virus overnight. The ministry said the countrywide death toll stands at 6,437. Is that the number of active cases across the country is just over 7,000. The ministry said so far 294,000 people have recovered, while 103 patients are on ventilators. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In Taiwan, conservationists are collecting rare plant species before they are lost to climate change and human encroachment. The environmentalists say they want to ensure Taiwan's biodiversity is protected and can be reintroduced. Details in this report.
Taiwan has a heavy populated, sometimes polluted, western coastal plain. About 70% of the island is covered in a dense mountainous forest, home to deer, wild boar, and a highly threatened population of bears. The government has made environmental protection and shifting to renewable energy a key priority. The plant hunters are scouring subtropical Taiwan from the rugged eastern coast.
I started collecting plants when I was still at school. I didn't used to think it was that important, but since I began working at the conservation center, I have realized that many living things that used to be there are no longer there. So for many living things, if we don't conserve them properly, then perhaps in the future you'll no longer be able to find them.
The group members have to clamber up a steep cliff and face other difficulties in the rainy climate of the country to gather plants.
Not everyone can go to the places I go to. I can stay a long time out in the wild, in the mountains or forests. I go in scattered directions. I am very good at climbing trees. Not everyone can climb trees.
Scientists have signed a petition calling for immediate action to address the climate emergency. They have demanded the same amount of attention and resources to counter climate change as had been pledged for the coronavirus pandemic.
Australian wildlife rescuers have managed to save 90 stranded pilot whales beached alongside the country's west coast island. Officials said 4 of the 90 saved whales were euthanized as they were too exhausted to be rescued. Tasmania Parks and Wildlife Service Manager Nick Decker said the rescue efforts will continue tomorrow as well. He said the focus will now be shifted to gathering hundreds of dead whales strewn across sandbanks, bays and floating in the water. At least 470 whales were discovered beached on the shore in sandbars along the remote west coast of the island state near the town of Strahan. Over 380 have already died over the past week. Major car makers say they are suing the U.S. government over import taxes on Chinese parts. The U.S. and China have imposed border taxes on each other's goods and services as part of a trade war. Tesla is the latest auto firm to object to custom duties slapped by the Trump administration and is demanding refunds. The car makers have filed a number of lawsuits in the past few days in New York-based Court of International Trade. In its filing, Tesla said the tariffs are arbitrary, capricious, and an abuse of discretion. While Mercedes-Benz said the U.S. government is doing prosecution of an unlimited trade war affecting over $500 billion imports from China. Earlier, the World Trade Organization ruled that the U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods were inconsistent with international trade rules. Thailand has taken first legal action against Facebook and Twitter for ignoring requests to take down content. The digital ministry said they have filed complaints with cybercrime police against the social media giants. It said the two companies missed a 15-day deadline to comply with the court orders issued a month ago. If the companies fail to respond to the legal action, police could bring a criminal case against them. The ministry said if the companies acknowledge the wrongdoing, the issue can be settled on fines. U.S. stocks teeter as traders await the latest batch of economic data. The fluctuation comes as tech firms try to recover from its recent losses. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is trading lower fractionally. The S&P 500 is trading marginally higher, whereas the Nasdaq Composite Index is trading higher about 0.25%. Meanwhile, oil prices dropped amid a stronger dollar and a renewed wave of COVID-19 cases in Europe. Former Australian cricket legend Dean Jones has died of a heart attack at the age of 59 in India. Born in Melbourne, Jones played 52 tests and 164 one-day matches for Australia. He has also been an active cricket analyst and commentated on various leagues around the world. With the 216 as his best score, Jones scored 11 centuries in Test cricket. In ODIs, he scored 7 centuries and 46 50s. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.news.